Sometimes the loneliest place in the world is inside your own home, surrounded by memories of the life you used to have. Isaac knew that feeling all too well. At 50, he was raising his daughter alone, doing everything he could to be both mother and father to 8-year-old Zoe. When he hired a babysitter named Maya, he decided to test her by pretending to fall asleep in his chair. He wanted to see how she treated Zoe when nobody was watching. What happened that night surprised him completely. After Zoe went to bed, Maya sat down beside Isaac and gently rested her head on his shoulder. That one simple moment would change everything for both of them. What did Isaac discover about letting people into his guarded heart? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock rang at 5:30 in the morning, the same as it had every weekday for the past 3 years. Isaac's hand shot out from under the covers, silencing the persistent beeping before it could wake Zoe in the next room. He lay there for a moment in the darkness, feeling the weight of another day settling onto his shoulders like a familiar coat. Heavy, worn, but necessary. The bedroom still felt too empty. Caroline's side of the bed remained untouched, the pillows arranged exactly as they had been the morning she left for the hospital and never came home. Round his neck hung a thin gold chain, and suspended from it was Caroline's wedding ring alongside his own. He'd stopped wearing his ring on his finger a year after her death. It felt dishonest somehow, claiming a marriage that existed only in memory. But he couldn't bring himself to put it away completely, so he wore them both close to his heart, hidden under his shirt. A private reminder of what he'd lost and what he couldn't let go. By 6 o'clock, Isaac was in the kitchen, starting the coffee maker and pulling out ingredients for Zoe's lunch. The routine was so ingrained he could do it half asleep. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich cut diagonally, an apple sliced, a juice box, pretzels in a small container. "Daddy?" Zoe's small voice came from the doorway. She stood there in her pajamas, her dark hair a wild tangle around her face. She had Caroline's eyes, warm brown, expressive, and seeing them every day was both a gift and an ache. "Morning, sweetheart." "You're up early." They made breakfast together in comfortable silence, Isaac scrambling eggs, while Zoe carefully arranged toast on plates. These quiet moments were his favorite part of the day. "Daddy," Zoe said as they sat down to eat, "can I go to Brenna's birthday party next Saturday?" Isaac's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Saturday. His mind raced through his schedule. He had inventory at the shop that morning, couldn't miss it. His sister Diane was visiting her in-laws. Bernard would be unavailable, please. Zoe's voice was small, hopeful. "Everyone's going." Isaac looked at his daughter's face, saw the longing there. She'd been invited to fewer parties this year. Other parents' pity had worn off, and playdates required coordination that exhausted everyone. Slowly, Zoe was being left behind, and Isaac knew it was his fault. "Let me figure something out," he said finally, hating the disappointment that flickered across her features. At Greenfield Elementary, Isaac walked Zoe to her classroom, despite her protests that she was big enough to go alone. Mrs. Patterson gave him a sympathetic smile. Everyone at school knew their story. Everyone was kind and careful around them, which somehow made it worse. Dalton's Automotive Repair sat on the edge of downtown, a square brick building where Isaac had worked for 20 years. Bernard, his oldest friend at the shop, greeted him with concern. "You look terrible." "Thanks. You're a real confidence booster. When's the last time you slept a full night?" Bernard's expression was worried. "Listen, I could come by Thursday, hang with Zoe, give you a break. We're fine." The words came out harsher than intended. "I appreciate it, Bernard, really, but we have our routine." Bernard didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. They'd had this conversation too many times before. Isaac's phone buzzed during lunch. A text from Diane called the school. "Zoe seems sad lately. Everything okay?" Isaac stared at the message, guilt twisting in his chest. He typed back, "She's fine. Just adjusting." Adjusting to what? It had been 3 years. When did adjusting end and this become their permanent reality? At 4:30, Isaac picked up Zoe from her after-school program. She was sitting alone in the corner drawing with crayons. The picture made Isaac's chest tighten. 3 figures, one tall labeled Daddy, one small labeled Me, and a third drawn in lighter, almost faded colors, labeled Mommy. Zoe had been drawing variations of this same picture for months, with the mother figure becoming progressively more translucent. That evening, they fell into their routine. Homework at the kitchen table. Dinner, spaghetti and jarred sauce, nothing special. Bath time, stories. When Isaac tucked Zoe into bed, she held onto his hand. Daddy, do you think Mommy would be sad that I can't remember what her voice sounded like? Isaac's heart cracked open. He sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back. Oh, sweetheart, no, Mommy would understand. And she'd be so proud of you. How brave you are. How kind. I miss her. I miss her too. Downstairs, Isaac collapsed into his leather armchair, his refuge, positioned where he could see both the television and the stairs. He didn't turn anything on, just sat in the quiet house, feeling the emptiness press against him from all sides. His phone buzzed. Bernard, Thursday inventory moved to Saturday morning, mandatory, sorry man, Saturday. Zoe's party. Isaac closed his eyes, frustration building. He needed this job. Couldn't say no to mandatory anything, which meant he needed help. The realization sat heavy and bitter. For 3 years he'd managed alone, proving to himself and everyone else that he could handle it, that he didn't need anyone. But they weren't fine. Zoe was lonely. He was exhausted, and his stubborn pride was hurting his daughter. Isaac pulled out his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, he typed, "Babysitter needed. Saturdays, occasional evenings. References required." He stared at the words for a long time before hitting post. It felt like betrayal, like admitting defeat, like letting go of Caroline in some fundamental way. But when he climbed the stairs and looked in on Zoe, small and peaceful in her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and her faded drawings, he knew he had to try, even if it terrified him. The responses came quickly, too quickly. By Monday morning, Isaac had 17 messages from potential babysitters. Most were clearly copy-paste responses, generic and impersonal. A few had concerning gaps in their references. One wanted to bring her boyfriend along. Isaac deleted that one immediately. 3 stood out as possibilities. He scheduled interviews for Wednesday evening, giving himself time to run background checks and call references. The practical steps felt manageable. It was the emotional weight that pressed down on him, the knowledge that he was about to let someone into their home, into Zoe's life, into the space that had been just the two of them for so long. Wednesday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Isaac had cleaned the house, really cleaned it, not just the surface tidying he usually managed. Zoe sat on the couch pretending to read, but really watching him pace. "Why are you nervous, Daddy?" "They're just babysitters." "I'm not nervous. You've checked the clock 6 times. The first candidate arrived at 6 o'clock. Kristen was 19, recommended by a family from Zoe's school. She seemed nice enough, but spent most of the interview glancing at her phone. When Zoe tried to show her a drawing, Kristen gave it a distracted, "That's nice," without really looking. The second arrived 15 minutes late. Patricia was in her 50s, experienced, with credentials that looked impressive on paper. But she was formal to the point of coldness, addressing Zoe as the child rather than by name. When she left, Zoe whispered, "She reminds me of the principal." Isaac checked his watch. The third candidate was late. He was about to text her when the doorbell rang. The young woman on his porch looked flustered, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, her cheeks flushed. "I'm so sorry I'm late. The bus broke down and I had to wait for the next one, and my phone died, so I couldn't call." She stopped, took a breath. "I'm Maya Cordova. I'm here about the babysitting position." Something in Isaac relaxed slightly. At least she cared enough to be apologetic. "Come in." Maya stepped inside, and immediately her attention went to Zoe, who was peeking around the corner. "Hi there. You must be Zoe. I love your shirt. Is that a unicorn?" Zoe looked down at her favorite purple shirt, nodded shyly. "Unicorns are the best," Maya said with genuine enthusiasm. "Do you like to draw them?" Sometimes. Zoe's voice was quiet but interested. They sat in the living room, and Isaac went through his standard questions. Maya was 23, studying early childhood education online while working part-time jobs. She'd been babysitting since she was 15, had references from 4 different families, and clearly knew what she was talking about when it came to children. She pulled a worn leather journal from her backpack to jot down notes. Isaac noticed it was filled with colorful tabs and sketches visible at the edges, but it was the way she interacted with Zoe that caught Isaac's attention. Maya didn't talk down to her or ignore her. She asked Zoe questions. What books did she like? What was her favorite subject in school? Did she play any sports? And she listened to the answers, really listened, responding with follow-up questions that made Zoe's face light up. "My mom used to read to me every night," Zoe said suddenly. Before she died, the room went quiet. Isaac tensed, waiting for the awkward sympathy, the uncomfortable shifting that usually followed when Zoe mentioned Caroline. Maya's expression softened. "What was her favorite book to read to you?" "Where the Wild Things Are. That's a good one." Maya's voice was gentle. "My mom liked that one too. She died when I was 12. Isaac looked up sharply. Maya met his eyes, and he saw understanding there, real understanding, not pity. Someone who knew what loss felt like, who didn't need to pretend it wasn't there. "I'm sorry," Zoe said quietly. "Thank you, sweetie." "I'm sorry about your mom, too." Maya smiled, sad but genuine. "It's hard, isn't it? But I bet she'd be really proud of you." Zoe nodded, and something passed between them, a recognition, a connection that made Isaac's chest tight. They talked for another 20 minutes. Maya's references checked out. He'd called them all that morning. Her background check came back clean. She was available Saturday mornings and some evenings. Everything lined up perfectly. So why did Isaac feel like he was standing on the edge of something irrevocable? "I'll need to think about it," he heard himself say, even though he knew she was the right choice. "I'll call you by Friday." Maya nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need." She said goodbye to Zoe, who actually hugged her, something she rarely did with strangers. After Maya left, Zoe turned to Isaac with serious eyes. "I like her, Daddy. She's nice." "She is," Isaac agreed, "and she understands about Mommy." "Yes." Isaac's throat felt tight. "She does." That night, after Zoe was asleep, Isaac sat in his armchair and stared at Maya's contact information on his phone. He thought about Caroline, about the promise he'd made to keep living. He thought about Zoe's loneliness and his own exhaustion. He thought about change and fear and the way Maya had looked at his daughter, with kindness and genuine care. Finally he typed, "The position is yours if you want it." Saturday at 8 a.m. The response came quickly. "I'd be honored. Thank you for trusting me." Trust. Isaac set his phone down and closed his eyes. That was exactly what terrified him. Saturday morning arrived with October sunshine and Isaac's stomach in knots. He'd been awake since 5, running through worst-case scenarios in his mind. By 7:30, he'd checked the locks 3 times and reorganized the emergency contact list on the refrigerator. "You're being weird." "Daddy," Zoe observed from the kitchen table, "I'm not being weird. You rearranged the magnets 4 times. The doorbell rang. 8 o'clock exactly. Maya stood on the porch with a backpack slung over one shoulder and a canvas bag in her hands. "Good morning. I brought some supplies, art stuff if that's okay. I thought maybe Zoe and I could do a project." Something in Isaac's chest loosened slightly. That's really thoughtful. "Come in." He spent the next 15 minutes going over instructions he'd already written down. Emergency numbers, bedtime routine, lunch preferences, the Wi-Fi password, where the first aid kit was stored. Maya listened patiently, occasionally jotting notes in her worn journal. "Mr. Dalton," Maya said gently when he paused for breath, "we're going to be fine. I promise I'll take good care of her." Zoe rescued him. "Daddy, you're going to be late for work." Isaac crouched down, pulled his daughter into a tight hug. "It'd be good for Maya, okay?" "I will." Zoe pulled back, rolled her eyes. "Go, Daddy, we'll be fine." Isaac straightened, met Maya's eyes. "My cell number is on the fridge, the counter, and the list you texted me last night." Maya's smile was kind. "Go to work, Mr. Dalton. We've got this." At work, Isaac threw himself into inventory with forced focus, but his mind kept drifting home. At 10:30, his phone buzzed. A photo, Zoe and Maya at the kitchen table, both wearing paint-splattered aprons, laughing. They were working on watercolor paintings, their hands covered in various colors. The caption read, "Having fun." "Don't worry." Isaac stared at the photo for a long moment. His daughter looked happy, really genuinely happy. When was the last time he'd seen that expression? The thought should have brought relief. Instead, it triggered something uncomfortable, a twist of jealousy, inadequacy. Maya had been there 3 hours and already connected with Zoe in ways Isaac couldn't manage. "That your girl?" Bernard appeared over his shoulder. "Yeah," Isaac quickly locked the screen. "She looks happy, man." "That's good." Bernard gave him a knowing look. "You're not being replaced, you know. Kids can care about more than one person." At 2 o'clock, Isaac made a decision to head home early. The drive took 10 minutes. He let himself in quietly and stopped. Music played softly, something gentle and melodic. He could smell something delicious. Not boxed mac and cheese, something richer, homemade. Maya and Zoe were in the kitchen, flour dusting the counter, and both of them. They were baking cookies, Zoe carefully placing dough on a sheet while Maya guided her hands. "Like this?" Zoe asked. "Perfect. You're a natural baker." Maya glanced at the oven timer. "The first batch should be ready in 2 minutes. Your dad's going to think we're professional chefs. Do you think he'll be proud?"
"Sweetheart, your dad is already proud of you."
Every single day, Isaac's throat tightened. The house smelled alive, vanilla and butter and warmth. Zoe was covered in flour and grinning, more animated than she'd been in months, and there, open on the counter, was Caroline's recipe box. Maya looked up and spotted him. Her expression shifted to surprise, then pleasure. "Mr. Dalton, we didn't hear you come in." Zoe spun around. "Daddy, you're home early." "Look, we made cookies." "I see that. Smells amazing. Maya showed me how to make them from scratch. And we made mac and cheese, too, the real kind, not from a box." "We found your wife's recipe box," Maya said, a note of apology in her voice. "I hope that was okay." "Zoe said her mom used to make these cookies, and I thought, it's fine." The words came out sharper than Isaac intended. He saw Maya's expression falter, saw Zoe's excitement dim. He softened his tone. "Really, it's thoughtful. Thank you. But the damage was done." The easy warmth in the kitchen had shifted, grown tense. Maya began cleaning up with quick, efficient movements. The oven timer beeped. Maya pulled out the last batch of cookies, then turned to Zoe with a gentle smile. "Why don't you go pick out a book for your dad to read later?" Zoe nodded, sensing the adults needed to talk, and disappeared upstairs. Silence settled over the kitchen. Maya wiped down the counter, not meeting Isaac's eyes. Finally she spoke. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." "With the recipe box. I should have asked first." "No." Isaac leaned against the doorframe. "You didn't. I'm sorry. This is all new. Having someone here, seeing Zoe so happy with someone else. It's harder than I thought it would be." Maya's expression softened. "I'm not trying to replace anyone, Mr. Dalton. I know I can't. I wouldn't want to." "Isaac, please, just call me Isaac." "Isaac." She tested the name, nodded. "I grew up without a mom. I know what that hole feels like. I'm just trying to help fill it a little, not take her place. There's a difference, I know." And he did know, intellectually. "How did you manage it?" "Growing up without her?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, some days better than others. I had my younger brothers to take care of, and that helped. Gave me purpose." She looked up at him. "But the loneliness doesn't really go away. You just learn to carry it differently." "Thank you," Isaac said quietly. "For today. For making her smile like that. She's a special kid. You're doing a good job with her." Maya gathered her things. "Same time next Saturday?" "Actually," Isaac heard himself speak before he'd fully formed the thought. "Would you be available for some evenings too? Tuesday and Thursday, if that works." "I can do that," Maya smiled. "I'd like that." After Maya left, Isaac tried one of the cookies. It tasted exactly like he remembered, exactly like Caroline's. Maya had followed the recipe perfectly, had cared enough to get it right. That night he texted her, "Thank you for today. The cookies are perfect." Maya's response came quickly. "Thank you for trusting me with her. See you Tuesday." Isaac looked around his kitchen. It looked lived in. It looked like a home again. The thought should have comforted him. Instead, it left him feeling unsettled, like he was standing at the beginning of something he couldn't control. 2 weeks passed, and Maya became a fixture in their lives. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, plus Saturday mornings. The house took on a different rhythm, one Isaac was still adjusting to, even as he recognized its benefits. Zoe flourished. She talked more, laughed more, drew pictures with vibrant colors instead of muted tones. Her teacher sent an email noting improved participation. Even Diane commented during their Sunday call. "She sounds different, lighter." Isaac couldn't deny the changes. He just wasn't sure how he felt about them. He maintained careful distance with Maya. Their interactions were polite, functional. He'd arrive home to find dinner prepared. The house tidy, Zoe bathed and ready for bed. Maya would give him a brief update, gather her things and leave. Sometimes he drove her to the bus stop. Sometimes she insisted she was fine walking. She tried occasionally to engage him in conversation. Asked about his day, mentioned something funny Zoe had said. Isaac responded with 1 or 2 words, keeping the wall firmly in place. If Maya was hurt by his distance, she didn't show it. She remained warm with Zoe, professional with him, and never pushed for more than he offered. The evening everything shifted was a Thursday in late October. Isaac's day had been brutal, a difficult customer, a repair that took twice as long as estimated, Bernard calling in sick. He was exhausted, frustrated, wanting nothing more than to collapse in his armchair. Instead, he walked into his house and smelled pot roast. Isaac stopped in the hallway. Pot roast! Caroline's pot roast, the one she made on special occasions, the one that took hours and filled the house with comfort and everything he'd lost. He found them in the kitchen. Zoe was setting the table, the good plates, not their everyday ones. Maya stood at the stove, Caroline's recipe box open beside her. "Daddy!" Zoe's face lit up. "Maya's making Mommy's pot roast. For your birthday!" His birthday. Isaac had forgotten his own birthday, 51 years old today, and it had completely slipped his mind. Caroline used to make a big deal of birthdays. After she died, they'd become just another day to get through. Zoe mentioned it this afternoon, Maya said, uncertainty in her expression. "I hope this is okay. I know it's last minute, but we wanted to do something special." Isaac set down his briefcase slowly. The kitchen looked like it had when Caroline was alive. Table set properly, fresh rolls warming, even a small cake on the counter. Maya had gone to considerable effort. For him. For a birthday he hadn't even remembered. "You didn't have to do this." His voice came out rough. "I know." Maya wiped her hands on a towel. "But Zoe wanted to, and I thought everyone should feel celebrated on their birthday." Something in Isaac's carefully maintained composure cracked. This young woman, who owed him nothing beyond the hours he paid her for, had spent her afternoon making his late wife's pot roast because his daughter wanted him to feel special. "Thank you," he managed. It's very kind." Dinner was the best meal Isaac had eaten in 3 years. The pot roast tasted exactly right, tender, flavorful, perfect. Maya had followed the recipe precisely, down to the vegetables Caroline always included. They ate at the dining room table, and Zoe chatted happily about her day, about the birthday card she'd made at school. The present was a new picture frame with a photo of Isaac and Zoe from last month. One Maya had apparently helped Zoe print at the library. In the photo, they were both smiling. Isaac couldn't remember the last time he'd seen a picture of himself smiling. After dinner, Maya started cleaning up. Isaac joined her at the sink, drying dishes while she washed. "You really didn't have to do all this," he said quietly. "I wanted to." Maya handed him a plate. Zoe was so excited about it. "She talked about you all afternoon, how hard you work, how you always make sure she has everything she needs, how you read to her every night even when you're exhausted." Isaac's throat tightened. "She adores you," Maya continued. "I hope you know that. I'm not always sure I'm enough." For her, Maya turned to look at him directly. "You're her whole world, Isaac. Everything you do, it matters." She sees it all. The words hit something deep in his chest. For 3 years, he'd been running on empty, convinced he was failing, that Zoe deserved better than his exhausted, grief-stricken best. "How do you do it?" Isaac asked. "Stay so positive, so patient. You're working multiple jobs, going to school, and you still show up here with energy and ideas." Maya was quiet for a moment, her hands stilling in the soapy water. "Honestly, some days I don't feel positive at all. I'm tired. I'm worried about money, about school, about—" She stopped. "But when I'm here with Zoe, it helps. It reminds me why I'm doing all of it. Why I want to work with children. Because of your brothers?" "Partly." Maya pulled the plug, watched the water drain. "After my mom died, taking care of them was the only thing that made sense. The only thing I could control when everything else felt chaotic." Isaac understood that completely. After Caroline's death, focusing on Zoe had been his anchor, the one thing that kept him moving forward when grief threatened to drown him. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence. When Maya gathered her things to leave, Isaac found himself not wanting her to go. Not because he needed her to stay, but because for the first time in years, his house felt less lonely. "Maya," he said, as she reached the door. "Thank you, really, not just for tonight, but for everything. For Zoe, for—" he gestured vaguely. "For bringing life back into this house." Maya smiled, and something warm flickered in her expression. "You're welcome, Isaac. Happy birthday." After she left, Zoe insisted on one more story before bed. As Isaac read, she interrupted. "Did you have a good birthday, Daddy?" "The best one I've had in a long time, sweetheart." "I'm glad." She snuggled closer. "Maya's nice, isn't she?" "She is." "Do you think she gets lonely?" "Since she doesn't have a mom or dad?" The question caught Isaac off guard. "I don't know, maybe." "I think she does," Zoe said with 8-year-old certainty. "But maybe she's less lonely when she's with us. Like how we're less lonely when she's here." Isaac kissed the top of her head, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. His daughter, in her simple wisdom, had articulated something Isaac had been afraid to acknowledge. They were all lonely. And somehow, together, they were all a little less so. The next Tuesday evening marked a subtle shift. Isaac came home to find Maya helping Zoe with a school project about family traditions. They'd spread photos across the coffee table, pictures of Caroline, of holidays past, of moments Isaac had boxed away, because looking at them hurt too much. "I hope this is okay," Maya said when she noticed him in the doorway. Zoe's assignment was to talk about family traditions. She wanted to include her mom. Isaac moved closer, looking at the photos. Caroline laughing at Christmas. Caroline and baby Zoe at the park. Caroline and Isaac on their wedding day, so young and full of hope. "We used to have pancake Sundays," Zoe explained, pointing to a photo. "Mommy would make funny shapes." "Remember, Daddy?" "I remember." Isaac's voice was soft. "She made yours look like butterflies. Can we do pancake Sundays again?" Zoe asked hopefully. Isaac looked at Maya, who smiled encouragingly. "I think that's a wonderful tradition to bring back." "Then we will," Isaac said, surprising himself. This Sunday, after Zoe went to bed, Isaac and Maya sat in the living room, the photos still scattered between them. Maya had made tea. She'd learned where everything was kept, had made herself quietly at home in ways that should have felt intrusive, but somehow didn't. "Thank you," Isaac said, "for helping her with this. I know going through these photos couldn't have been easy. They're beautiful memories." Maya picked up the wedding photo, studied it. "You both look so happy." "How long were you married?" 15 years. Met her when I was 33. Thought I was too set in my ways for marriage. She proved me wrong about a lot of things. What was she like?" Usually Isaac deflected these questions. Tonight something made him answer honestly. "Strong, funny, patient with my stubbornness. She was a 3rd-grade teacher, loved kids, wanted 6 of them." His voice caught. "We only got Zoe. Caroline had complications during the birth. The doctors said another pregnancy would be too risky. That must have been hard." It was. But Caroline said one perfect daughter was enough. "And she was right. Zoe is perfect." Isaac paused. "When Caroline got sick, she made me promise to keep living. To not let grief turn me into someone who just existed. I'm not sure I've kept that promise very well." Maya set down her tea, met his eyes. "You're keeping it now?" By letting me help. By bringing back pancake Sundays. By taking small steps forward. It doesn't feel like forward. It feels like betrayal sometimes. I understand that. Maya's hand went to her neck, where a small silver locket rested against her collarbone. Isaac had noticed it before, but never asked about it. My mom gave me this the week before she died. There's a photo of her inside. I wear it every day. May I? Isaac asked. Maya unclasped it, handed it to him. Inside was a tiny photo of a woman with Maya's warm eyes and gentle smile. She's beautiful. You look like her. Thank you. Maya's voice was thick with emotion. For the first year after she died, I couldn't look at it without breaking down. Now it's a comfort. A reminder that love doesn't end just because someone's gone. Isaac studied the locket, then carefully handed it back. How old were your brothers when she died?
8 and 6.
I was 12, old enough to remember everything, young enough to feel completely lost. Maya refastened the locket around her neck. Our aunt took us in, but she had her own family. I became the mother figure by default. That's a lot of responsibility for a 12-year-old. It was. But it saved me, I think. Gave me purpose when I might have fallen apart otherwise. She smiled sadly. They're in college now, both of them. I'm very proud. You raised them well. We raised each other. Maya picked up her tea again. That's what family does, right? You show up for each other even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Isaac thought about that. About showing up, about family. About the ways Maya had shown up for them without asking for anything in return. Can I ask you something? Maya's voice was hesitant. Why did you really hire me? I know you needed help with Zoe, but you seemed so reluctant. Like it physically hurt you to let someone in. Isaac was quiet for a long moment. Because letting someone in means risking loss again. And I don't know if I can survive that twice, so you'd rather be lonely than risk being hurt. When you say it like that, it sounds foolish. It's not foolish. It's human. Maya leaned forward slightly. But Isaac, you're hurting anyway. Loneliness is its own kind of pain. At least connection comes with joy too. The words settled between them, heavy with truth. Isaac looked at this young woman who'd somehow become essential to their household in just a few weeks, who understood grief in ways most people couldn't, who showed up with kindness and patience and asked for so little in return. You're wise beyond your years, he said finally. Maya laughed softly. Grief has a way of aging you. I'm 23, but some days I feel 50. I'm 51, and some days I feel 100. They smiled at each other, sharing the weight of their respective losses. Outside, the October wind picked up, rattling the windows. Inside, the house felt warm and lived in, filled with the quiet comfort of two people who understood each other's pain. Maya glanced at the clock. I should go. I have a class assignment due tonight. Let me drive you home. It's too late for the bus. Isaac, you don't have to. I know. But I want to. During the drive, they talked easily. About Zoe's upcoming school concert, about Maya's classes, about small, ordinary things that felt significant somehow. When they arrived at Maya's building, Isaac noticed the neighborhood properly for the first time. Run down, poorly lit. Not somewhere he wanted someone he cared about walking alone at night. Someone he cared about. The thought should have alarmed him. Instead, it felt like simple truth. Thank you for the ride, Maya said, gathering her bag. Maya, Isaac stopped her before she could open the door. Thank you for tonight, for helping me remember that talking about Caroline doesn't have to hurt. That remembering can be healing too. Maya smiled, her hand resting on the door handle. That's what she'd want, you know, for you to remember the joy, not just the loss. After she left, Isaac sat in his car for a moment, watching until she was safely inside. Then he drove home through quiet streets, thinking about lockets and wedding photos, and the strange alchemy that turns strangers into people who matter. When he got home, he tucked the wedding album back into storage, but he left out one photo, Caroline laughing at Christmas, full of life. He placed it on the mantel where he could see it every day, not as a shrine to grief, but as a celebration of love that had been real and good and worth remembering. November arrived with early darkness and the kind of cold that seeped into bones. Isaac found himself looking forward to the evenings Maya came, not just for Zoe's sake, but for his own. The house felt warmer when she was there, more alive. One Thursday evening, Isaac arrived home earlier than usual. Bernard had insisted he leave on time for once, practically pushing him out the door. "Go home to your family," Bernard had said, and Isaac hadn't corrected him about Maya not being family. He found the living room empty, but heard voices from upstairs. Zoe's room. Isaac climbed the stairs quietly, drawn by the sound of laughter. Maya and Zoe sat cross-legged on the bedroom floor, surrounded by fabric and craft supplies. Maya was showing Zoe how to sew a simple stuffed animal, patiently guiding her small hands through the stitches. "Like this?" Zoe asked, concentrating hard. "Perfect. You're a natural." Maya's voice was warm with encouragement. "Your mom would be proud of how careful you are. Did your mom teach you to sew?" "She did. Right before she got really sick." Maya's hands stilled for a moment. "She said every girl should know how to create something with her own hands. Something that lasts." Isaac leaned against the doorframe, watching them. There was something achingly familiar about the scene. The patient instruction, the shared focus, the easy affection. Caroline had sat with Zoe like this, teaching her to braid hair, to tie shoes, to paint watercolors. Maya looked up and spotted him. "Isaac, we didn't hear you come in." "Don't let me interrupt. This looks like serious work." Zoe held up her creation, a lopsided but charming stuffed rabbit. "Look, Daddy. Maya's teaching me to make toys." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Can Maya stay for dinner?" Zoe asked hopefully. "Please?" Isaac met Maya's eyes. She looked tired, more than usual. The shadows under her eyes had deepened, and there was a paleness to her complexion that concerned him. "Of course," he said. "If Maya wants to stay, I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. Please, stay." Dinner was simple, grilled cheese and tomato soup, but it felt significant somehow. The three of them around the kitchen table, conversation flowing easily. Zoe told them about school, about her friend Brenna's upcoming sleepover, about a book she was reading. Isaac and Maya contributed their own stories, building on each other's comments in a way that felt natural. Practiced, like a family, the thought came unbidden. And Isaac didn't push it away. After dinner, Zoe begged to watch a movie. They settled on the couch together, Zoe between them, gradually growing drowsy. Halfway through, she fell asleep, her head on Maya's shoulder. "She's out," Maya whispered, smiling down at Zoe. "I'll carry her to bed." Isaac started to stand, but Maya stopped him. "Just another minute. She's so peaceful." Isaac settled back, and they sat in the flickering light of the television, Zoe breathing softly between them. Maya's hand rested on Zoe's back, a protective maternal gesture that made Isaac's chest tight. "You're good with her," he said quietly. "Natural. I had a lot of practice with my brothers." Maya's voice was soft, but Zoe's special. She paused, searching for words. "She feels like mine in a way. Like family. She is family. To you." Isaac meant it. "You've become family to both of us." Maya looked up at him, something vulnerable in her expression. "That means more than you know. I've felt," she stopped, bit her lip. "I've felt like I belong here. Like this is where I'm supposed to be." "That probably sounds strange." "It doesn't sound strange at all." Their eyes held for a moment, and Isaac felt something shift, a recognition, an acknowledgement of what was growing between them. Not just employer and employee. Not just two people brought together by circumstance. Something deeper, more complex. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and her expression changed, worry flickering across her features. "Everything okay?" Isaac asked. "Just my landlord. Again." She silenced the phone. "It's fine." "Maya, really?" "It's fine." But her voice was strained. Isaac wanted to press, to help, but before he could say anything, Maya shifted carefully from under Zoe. "I should go. I have an early class tomorrow. Let me drive you." "The bus is fine." "Maya." Isaac's voice was gentle but firm. "Let me drive you." She nodded finally, gathering her things while Isaac carried Zoe upstairs and tucked her into bed. When he came back down, Maya was waiting by the door, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked exhausted, and Isaac noticed her hand trembling slightly as she zipped her jacket. During the drive, Maya was quiet, staring out the window. Isaac tried several times to start a conversation, but her responses were distracted, brief. When they arrived at her building, she reached for the door handle quickly. "Maya, wait." Isaac touched her arm gently. "What's going on, really?" She turned to face him, and in the dim light from the street lamp, Isaac saw tears in her eyes. "I'm just tired. It's been a long few weeks." "It's more than that." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Finally she spoke. "I might have to cut back on my hours. I need to pick up more shifts at my other job. The pay is better and I'm behind on rent." "How far behind?" "That's not Isaac, it's not your problem." "How far behind?" He repeated gently. 2 months. The admission seemed to cost her. "My landlord's been patient, but he needs the money. And I have tuition due, and my brothers need help with their books, and—" She stopped, pressed her palms against her eyes. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be telling you this." Isaac's mind raced. 2 months of rent. The stress Maya must be under, working multiple jobs, going to school, trying to help her family, and still showing up at his house with energy and patience for Zoe, never letting her own struggles show. "Don't cut your hours," he heard himself say. "Let me help." "No, Isaac, no. I can't. Please, let me help. I can advance you some pay, or I can't take your money." Maya's voice was firm despite her tears. "I appreciate it, I really do. But I have to handle this myself." "Why? Why do you have to handle everything alone?" "Because that's what I do." The words burst out of her. "I take care of things. I take care of people. I don't get taken care of." The vulnerability in her voice broke something in Isaac. He understood it completely. The need to be strong, to be self-sufficient, to never need anyone because needing people meant risking disappointment or loss. "I understand that," he said quietly. "I really do. But Maya, you don't have to do it alone. Not anymore." She looked at him, tears streaming down her face now. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared if I let people help, if I let people in, they'll see how much of a mess I really am, how much I'm struggling, and then they'll leave." "I'm not going to leave." The words came out with absolute certainty. "Neither is Zoe. You're part of our family now, and family shows up for each other." Maya sobbed once, then covered her face with her hands. Isaac wanted to pull her into his arms to comfort her, but he wasn't sure if he had that right yet. Instead, he reached out and took one of her hands gently. "We'll figure this out," he said. "Together, okay?" Maya nodded, unable to speak. They sat in his car in the dim light, her hand in his, and Isaac felt the walls he'd built around his heart continuing to crumble. 3 weeks passed, and Isaac quietly increased Maya's hours and pay. She protested at first, but he insisted, framing it as needing more help rather than charity. It was a fiction they both maintained, though the gratitude in her eyes told him she understood. The household transformed. Routine gave way to warmth, structure to comfort. Zoe called Maya her bonus grown-up, a term that made Maya tear up the first time she heard it. Isaac and Maya developed an easy rapport, shared meals, conversations about Zoe and life, comfortable silences that didn't need filling. Bernard noticed the change in Isaac, teased him gently about the babysitter. "It's not like that," Isaac insisted. Though he couldn't deny he looked forward to coming home now. One evening in late November, Maya brought her school books to work on after Zoe's bedtime. Isaac offered to help quiz her on child development concepts. They sat together at the kitchen table, close but not touching, and somehow the conversation drifted from academic to deeply personal. Maya asked about Caroline, expecting Isaac to shut down. Instead, he really talked about his late wife for the first time in years. The good memories, the hard parts of watching her decline, the complicated grief that came with relief when suffering finally ended. "I felt guilty for being relieved," Isaac admitted, "like I'd wished her death." "Relief isn't betrayal," Maya said gently. "It means you loved her enough to want her suffering to end. That's not the same as wanting her gone." Isaac's eyes filled with tears, the first he'd shed in months. Maya reached across the table and took his hand, and they sat like that for a long moment, connected by shared understanding of complicated grief. Then Maya's phone rang. She ignored it. It rang again. She apologized, stepped outside to answer. Isaac could hear her voice through the window, tense and upset. "I told you I need more time." She returned visibly shaken, made an excuse to leave early. In her hurry, she forgot her backpack. Isaac discovered it after she'd gone. He intended to just set it aside, but it tipped over, contents spilling across the floor. Among the scattered items, something caught his eye. Several unopened letters from Rosewood Memorial Hospital. His stomach dropped. He shouldn't look. He knew he shouldn't, but concern overrode privacy. He picked up one of the unopened envelopes, the return address, stark and official. Then he noticed the prescription bottles that had rolled across the floor, all bearing Maya's name. Medications he didn't recognize, but the labels indicated they were serious. Not antibiotics for an infection, something chronic, something ongoing. Isaac's hands trembled as he found one opened letter, clearly read and reread, based on its condition. He unfolded it carefully. The words jumped out at him. Chronic kidney disease, stage 3, treatment options, dialysis, transplant waiting list. The room tilted. Isaac sat down hard on the floor, surrounded by Maya's scattered belongings and her carefully hidden truth. She was sick, seriously sick, and she'd been hiding it from them while working herself to exhaustion. More letters revealed the scope of it. Medical bills with alarming amounts marked overdue. Correspondence about insurance coverage limits. A caseworker's notes about treatment plans. Maya wasn't just struggling financially because of rent and tuition. She was struggling because she was trying to afford staying alive. Everything suddenly made sense. Her exhaustion, the occasional dizzy spells she'd explained away as low blood sugar, her desperate need for money, her reluctance to accept help because she was terrified of being seen as unreliable, of losing this job that clearly meant everything to her. Isaac felt betrayed by the secret, but more than that, he felt terrified. Terrified of losing someone else he cared about, because that was the truth he could no longer avoid. He cared about Maya, deeply, more than he'd been willing to admit even to himself. He gathered the letters carefully, placed them back in her bag and called her. She didn't answer. He texted, "You forgot your bag. I'm bringing it over." The drive to Maya's apartment took 15 minutes that felt like hours. When she opened her door, her face drained of color at the sight of him holding her backpack. "Some things fell out," Isaac said quietly. "We need to talk." Maya's apartment was small but tidy. One room that served as bedroom and living space, a tiny kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. She sat on the edge of her bed, head in her hands, while Isaac took the only chair. "How long have you known?" Her voice was barely audible. "About 20 minutes. Isaac set the backpack down carefully. "Maya, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "I was afraid you'd fire me. Afraid you'd see me as a liability. Someone who might get too sick to work, who might not be reliable. I can't lose this job, Isaac. I can't lose—" Her voice broke. "I can't lose you and Zoe. You're not going to lose us. You don't understand. This isn't going away. I need treatment I can barely afford. I'm rationing medications. She sobbed. "I'm so tired. All the time. And I'm terrified that one day I'll get too sick to hide it, and you'll realize I'm not worth the trouble." Isaac crossed the small space and knelt in front of her. "Listen to me. You are worth it. You are worth everything. Do you understand?" "I'm broken, Isaac." "You're not broken. You're dealing with something difficult, and you've been doing it alone. But you don't have to anymore." Maya shook her head. "I couldn't tell you. You've already lost so much. You don't need someone else who might—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Might die." Isaac said it for her, his voice gentle. "Maya, I'm not naive. I know life doesn't come with guarantees. Caroline taught me that. But I also know that trying to avoid pain by avoiding connection is just another way of dying. I need this job," Maya whispered. "Not just for the money. Because being with you and Zoe, it's the first time in years I've felt like I have a family. Like I have a home. Like I matter beyond what I can do for other people. You do matter. To both of us. So much more than you know. They sat in her tiny apartment, the truth finally out between them. Isaac looked at this young woman who'd brought life back into his home, who'd shown his daughter how to laugh again, who'd reminded him what it felt like to want to come home at the end of the day. She was sick and scared and trying so hard to handle everything alone, just like he had been for 3 years. "We're going to figure this out," Isaac said firmly. "Together. You're going to tell me everything, your doctors, your treatment plan, what you need. And we're going to make sure you get the care you need." "Isaac, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He took both her hands in his. "You've been showing up for us. Let us show up for you." Maya looked at him through tears, and something in her expression shifted. A wall finally crumbling, a decision being made to trust, to let someone in, despite every fear telling her not to. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The next evening was tense, despite everyone's best efforts. Maya insisted on working, didn't want to lose the normalcy that made her feel grounded. Isaac agreed, but said they'd talk after Zoe went to bed. During dinner, Zoe sensed something was wrong, asked if they were fighting. Both adults immediately reassured her, put on smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. After Zoe's bedtime, Isaac and Maya sat in the living room with tea Maya had made. She'd quietly made herself at home in ways that now felt precious, rather than intrusive. The silence stretched between them until Isaac broke it. "I'm not firing you, but I need to understand why you didn't trust me." Maya wrapped her hands around her mug. "It's not about trust. It's about everyone I've ever depended on has either died or left. My mom died. My dad left before I was old enough to remember him. Even my aunt, she took us in out of obligation, not love. I learned to not need anyone, because needing people meant getting hurt." Isaac saw himself reflected in her words, the same defense mechanisms, the same fear. "I lost Caroline slowly, watched her slip away over 2 years. Every day I was terrified, and when she finally died, part of me was relieved. I hate myself for that." "Relief isn't betrayal," Maya said, echoing her earlier words. "It means you loved her enough to want her suffering to end." Isaac's eyes filled with tears, real tears, not the careful wetness he usually allowed himself. "I promised her I wouldn't stop living, but I was so scared of losing anyone else that I just stopped. Until you." He stood, retrieved something from the hall closet, Caroline's wedding album, untouched for 3 years. He sat back down beside Maya, closer than before, and opened it. The young couple smiled up at them from glossy pages. "She was beautiful," Maya said softly. "Zoe looks just like her." "She does." Isaac turned pages slowly. "But lately when Zoe smiles, I see you too. The way you've influenced her, shaped her. You're part of who she's becoming." Maya's breath caught. Isaac continued, turning to later photos. Hospital rooms, forced smiles, Caroline's diminishing presence. "I made her promise I'd keep living, but I didn't understand what that meant until you walked into our lives. You brought light back. Into this house, into Zoe's life, into my life." "When I found those letters," he went on, "I wasn't just scared of losing a babysitter. I was terrified of losing you, of watching someone else. He paused, the word catching in his throat. "Someone I care about deeply, facing something I can't fix." "Isaac, let me finish." He took her hands. "I want to help you, not because I pity you, but because you matter to us. To me, I have savings. Caroline's life insurance that I've been afraid to touch because using it felt like betraying her memory. But maybe this is what it's meant for. To help someone we love." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Isaac had said it without meaning to, but he didn't take it back. Maya pulled her hands away, stood abruptly. "You can't. Isaac, the medical bills alone, it's too much. You barely know me. I know enough." Isaac stood too. "I know you're kind. I know Zoe loves you. I know you make me feel alive again for the first time in 3 years. I know that night you fell asleep on my shoulder." Maya looked up sharply. "You were awake?" "I was testing you, pretending to sleep to see how you really treated Zoe when you thought no one was watching." He smiled slightly. "Stupid, I know. And what did you learn?" "That I was testing the wrong person. I should have been testing myself, whether I was brave enough to let someone in again, whether I could risk caring about someone, knowing I might lose them. He stepped closer. And I learned that when you rested your head on my shoulder, it was the first time in 3 years I felt at peace. Isaac, you're grieving. You're lonely. This isn't, don't tell me what I'm feeling. His voice was gentle but firm. I've had 3 years to understand grief. This is different. When I'm with you, I don't feel guilty for being happy. I don't feel like I'm betraying Caroline's memory. I feel like maybe I can have a life again. Maybe we both can. Maya turned to the window, arms wrapped around herself. I can't promise you a future. I don't know how long. Isaac closed the distance between them. None of us know how long we have. Caroline taught me that. What matters is what we do with the time we're given. I'm so tired of being alone. Maya's voice broke. So am I. They stood close, the air charged with possibility and fear and hope. Then footsteps sounded on the stairs. Zoe appeared, rubbing her eyes. I had a bad dream. Can Maya stay tonight? The innocent question carried enormous weight. Isaac and Maya exchanged glances, an entire conversation happening in that look. Of course she can, Isaac said. The guest room is ready. Zoe smiled, hugged them both, returned to bed. After she'd gone, Maya looked at Isaac with questions in her eyes. Stay, he said. Not just tonight. Stay with us. Move into the guest room. Let us help you through this. Let us be your family. Isaac, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But life is short and uncertain, and I don't want to waste any more time being afraid. He took her hands again. Please stay. Maya's resistance finally crumbled. Tears streamed down her face, not tears of sadness, but of relief, of finally letting go of the weight she'd carried alone for so long. Okay, she breathed. Okay. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya moved in. It started gradually. A few clothes in the guest room dresser, her toiletries in the bathroom, her textbooks on the shelf. Isaac drove her to medical appointments, sat with her during treatments, met her doctor, learned the full scope of her condition. The prognosis was cautiously optimistic with proper treatment, and if a donor match became available, Isaac got tested as a potential kidney donor without telling Maya. He told himself it was just to know, to have information. But he knew the truth. If he could help, if he could save her the way he couldn't save Caroline, he would do it without hesitation. Bernard noticed Isaac's frequent medical appointments, confronted him one afternoon at the shop. Isaac explained everything, Maya's illness, his growing feelings, the donor testing. Make sure you're doing this for the right reasons, Bernard warned. Not out of guilt or trying to replace Caroline. This is different, Isaac insisted. This is choosing to show up for someone while I still can. This is living, not hiding. At home, the relationship between Isaac and Maya remained undefined but deepening. Small touches lingered. Hands brushing while cooking, sitting close on the couch, long looks that said things words couldn't yet. Zoe repeatedly asked if Maya was going to be her new mom. Both adults gently redirected, but didn't deny the possibility. Maya's health stabilized with proper treatment. She gained weight, had more energy, smiled, came easier. The house filled with life, cooking, smells, laughter. The sound of 3 people who belonged together. One evening, while Zoe did homework, Maya thanked Isaac for everything. I never thought I'd have this. People who stay. Isaac took her hand. We're not going anywhere. The doorbell rang, a courier with medical documents. Isaac signed for them, tried to hide the envelope, but Maya saw the hospital return address. Her face went pale. Isaac, why are you getting mail from my hospital? Isaac's evasion failed. Maya grabbed the envelope, opened it despite his protests. Read the words that would change everything. Donor compatibility testing results. She looked up at him, shock and anger mixing. You got tested? Without telling me? 6 months had passed since the surgery, and summer had arrived with gentle warmth that seemed to mirror the healing happening inside Isaac's home. He stood in the kitchen making pancakes on a Sunday morning, carefully shaping them into butterflies, the way Caroline used to, the way he'd finally learned to do without his hands shaking, without grief paralyzing every attempt to honor her memory. Daddy, you're getting really good at the wings. Zoe called from the table. where she was setting out plates and syrup with the careful attention of a child who'd learned that small rituals mattered. "Your mom would be proud," Isaac said, and the words came easily now, without the sharp edge of pain that used to accompany every mention of Carolyn's name. The grief hadn't disappeared, it never would, but it had transformed into something gentler, something that could coexist with joy. Maya emerged from the bedroom, their bedroom now, though it had taken Isaac 3 months after the surgery to ask her to move from the guest room. She looked radiant, healthy in a way she hadn't when they'd first met. Her skin glowed, her eyes were bright, and she moved with an energy that still amazed Isaac every morning. The surgery had been successful for both of them. The new kidney was functioning perfectly, and both their bodies had healed better than the doctors had dared hope. "Something smells absolutely amazing," Maya said, wrapping her arms around Isaac's waist from behind, resting her head against his back in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Pancake Sunday," he replied, sliding a perfectly shaped butterfly onto a plate. "Family tradition. The old ones and the new ones." They gathered at the table, and the conversation flowed with the easy rhythm of people who belonged together. Zoe chattered about her upcoming 9th birthday party, no longer the quiet, withdrawn child who'd sat alone drawing faded pictures. Maya mentioned her final exam for her degree, excitement and nervousness mixing in her voice. Isaac shared a story from the shop that made them both laugh. This was what normal looked like now. Not the hollow routine of survival that had defined the 3 years after Caroline's death, but actual living, messy and beautiful, and full of the small moments that made life worth the effort. After breakfast, they cleaned up together, all 3 of them moving around the kitchen in synchronized chaos. Then they got ready for the day's main event, Maya's graduation ceremony and the celebration they were hosting afterward, the house filled with people by early afternoon. Bernard arrived with his wife, both of them beaming with pride. Diane came with her family, and Isaac watched his sister pull Maya into a tight hug, whispering something that made Maya's eyes fill with happy tears. Maya's younger brothers, now both in college, arrived with flowers and embarrassing stories from their childhood. A handful of Maya's classmates came, along with some families from Zoe's school who'd become genuine friends rather than sources of pitying sympathy. Isaac stood on the back porch for a moment, watching through the window as Maya laughed with a group of guests, as Zoe proudly showed everyone the celebration banner she'd made as his home, his actual home, not just a house he existed in, brimmed with life and warmth. "You did good, man," Bernard said, joining him with 2 bottles of beer. He handed one to Isaac. "Really good." "I got lucky," Isaac said, but Bernard shook his head. "Luck is finding someone special. Courage is letting them in. You chose to be brave, and that made all the difference." He clinked his bottle against Isaac's. "Caroline would be really happy right now. You know that, right?" Isaac's eyes found the living room mantel through the window, where 2 framed photos sat side by side. Caroline's portrait from that Christmas years ago, her smile bright and full of life. And beside it, a new photo taken just last week, Isaac, Maya and Zoe at the park, all 3 grinning at the camera. Maya held her graduation certificate. Zoe clutched a sign proclaiming, "Congratulations," and Isaac's arms wrapped around both of them. 2 different families, 2 different chapters. Both real, both precious, both part of his story. She would, Isaac agreed quietly. She'd love Maya. She'd love how Maya makes Zoe laugh, how she's helped her remember the good parts instead of just the loss, how she's helped me do the same. "So when are you going to make it official?" Bernard asked with a knowing grin. Isaac patted his shirt pocket where a small velvet box rested. He'd been carrying it for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. "Tonight, maybe, after everyone leaves. I want it to be just us." But Zoe, in her infinite wisdom and complete lack of patience, had other plans. During the gathering, she climbed onto a chair and clinked her juice glass with a spoon, the way she'd seen adults do at weddings. "Excuse me, everyone. I have an important announcement." The room quieted. Isaac felt his heart skip. What was she doing? I think my daddy should marry Maya, Zoe declared, with the serious confidence of a child who'd thought this through completely. Because she's already family and it should be official. Plus, I asked her if she'd be my mom, and she said if it was okay with Daddy, she'd be honored. So, Daddy, is it okay? Laughter and awe sounds rippled through the room. Maya's face flushed red, but she was smiling, her eyes finding Isaac's across the crowded space. In that look, he saw everything, love and hope and a future they'd both been too afraid to believe in just months ago. Isaac pulled the ring box from his pocket and crossed to where Maya stood. Surrounded by their friends and family, he knelt down in front of her, right there in their living room. In front of everyone who mattered, Maya Cordova, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. You walked into our lives when we needed you most. You brought light back into this house. You gave my daughter her smile back. You reminded me what it feels like to actually live instead of just survive. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver band with a small diamond. Nothing flashy, just honest and real, like everything between them. Will you marry me? Will you officially become part of this family you've already made whole? Maya's hands covered her mouth, tears streaming freely down her face. For a moment she couldn't speak, could only nod. Then she found her voice, shaky but certain. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Nothing would make me happier. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Zoe launched herself off the chair and into both of them, and they held her between them, the three of them tangled together, laughing and crying at once. Isaac slipped the ring onto Maya's finger, and she held her hand up to the light, watching it sparkle through her tears. The celebration continued for hours. There was cake and toasts and more laughter than Isaac could remember hearing in his home since before Carolyn got sick. It felt right, honoring this new beginning while still holding space for what had come before. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and Zoe was finally asleep, exhausted from excitement and sugar, Isaac and Maya sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Thank you, Maya said quietly, her head resting on his shoulder, her hand in his, the new ring catching moonlight. For what? For taking a chance on a broke babysitter who showed up late to her interview. For being brave enough to test me and then brave enough to let me stay. For showing me that family isn't just something you're born into, it's something you choose every single day. Isaac kissed her forehead. Thank you for falling asleep on my shoulder that first night. For showing me that moving forward isn't betrayal. For teaching both of us that loving again doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring what we had by choosing to keep living fully. They sat in comfortable silence, the swing creaking softly in the summer night. Inside the house, everything was peaceful. On Zoe's nightstand, her latest drawing showed 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow, all drawn in bright, bold colors. Below it, in her careful handwriting, "My forever family, official soon." Tomorrow would bring new adventures, wedding planning, continued healing, the ordinary challenges of blending a life together. But tonight, Isaac allowed himself to simply be present in this moment. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for a daughter who'd never stopped believing in possibilities. Grateful for a woman who'd walked into their lives as a stranger and become essential. The stars continued their ancient dance overhead. Somewhere, Isaac liked to think, Caroline was watching and smiling, proud of her daughter, proud of her husband for keeping his promise, proud that the love she'd planted in this family continued to grow and flourish even in her absence. This was the promise kept. This was living. This was home. The evening after Maya gave her answer felt like standing at the edge of something both terrifying and inevitable. 2 weeks had passed since Isaac received the donor compatibility results. 2 weeks of quiet conversations, medical consultations, research into every possible complication and outcome. 2 weeks of watching Isaac with Zoe, seeing the life he'd built, understanding the magnitude of what he was offering. On a cold December evening, with the first real snow of the season falling in thick, silent flakes outside the window, Maya found Isaac in his armchair, the same chair where this entire journey had begun, where she'd first fallen asleep against his shoulder and unknowingly changed the trajectory of all their lives. "I've made my decision," she said quietly. Her hands clasped in front of her like she was trying to hold herself together, Isaac set down the book he'd been pretending to read for the past hour. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his face remained calm, patient. He'd learned over these months with Maya that she needed space to speak her truth without pressure, without expectation coloring the air between them. "I'll accept the kidney." The words came out steady, despite the tears already forming in her eyes. "If you're absolutely certain this is what you want." Relief flooded through Isaac like a wave, warm and overwhelming. But before he could respond, Maya held up her hand. "But I need you to understand something first." She moved to sit on the arm of his chair, close enough that he could see the determination mixed with vulnerability in her expression. She took his hands in hers, holding them tightly. "I'm not just accepting an organ. I'm accepting a future with you, with both of you. Because if I take this gift, I'm promising to be here, for Zoe, for you, for whatever comes next." That's what this really means. Not just survival, but commitment. To this family we're building. "I know," Isaac said softly, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "That's exactly what I'm counting on. That's what I want, and you need to promise me something too." Maya's voice grew fierce, protective despite being the one who needed protection. "Promise me that if something goes wrong during the surgery, if something happens to you because of me, you'll forgive yourself. That you won't spend whatever time you have left carrying guilt about trying to help me. Promise me you won't let Zoe grow up watching you punish yourself." "Maya, promise me, Isaac, I need to hear you say it. I can't do this, I can't accept this gift. If I think there's even a chance you'll destroy yourself with guilt if things don't go perfectly." Isaac stood, pulling her up with him so they were face to face, eye to eye. He cupped her face in his hands, making sure she could see the absolute certainty in his expression. "I promise, but nothing's going to go wrong. We're going to do this, and we're both going to be fine. And then we're going to have years together, decades, a lifetime of pancake Sundays and Zoe's school concerts and arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes." Maya laughed through her tears, the sound breaking and beautiful. "How can you be so sure? How can you have that much faith when life has shown you how quickly everything can fall apart?" "Because I finally have something to live for again." Isaac's voice was rough with emotion. "Because I spent 3 years just existing, just going through motions, just surviving day to day. And then you walked into our lives and reminded me what it feels like to actually want to wake up in the morning. I'm not giving that up without a fight. I'm not giving you up." They stood in the quiet living room, snow falling steadily outside, the world reduced to just the two of them, and this moment of decision. Maya reached up, touched his face, traced the lines around his eyes that had been carved by grief but were now softening with hope. "I love you," she whispered. "I've loved you for months, but was too afraid to say it. Afraid you'd think I was just grateful, or trying to secure my place here, or confusing dependency with real feeling." Isaac pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I know the difference between gratitude and love, and I know what I feel. I love you, Maya, not as a replacement for Caroline, not as some second-place consolation prize. I love you because you're you, because you make terrible jokes when you're nervous, because you cry at children's movies, because you showed my daughter how to laugh again, because you make this house feel like a home instead of a museum." "I'm still terrified," Maya admitted, her hands fisting in his shirt. "Of the surgery, of something going wrong, of losing you after just finding you, of letting Zoe down if I can't." Isaac silenced her spiral by pulling her into a kiss, their first real kiss. Not a tentative brush of lips, but a declaration, a promise, a claiming of this moment and this future they were choosing together. When they pulled apart, both were crying, both were smiling, both were holding on like they'd finally found something worth not letting go. A small sound made them separate. Zoe stood at the bottom of the stairs in her pajamas, her stuffed rabbit, the one Maya had taught her to sew, tucked under one arm. Her hair was mussed from sleep, her eyes wide and knowing. "Why are you both crying?" Her voice carried more curiosity than worry. "Are you sad?" "No, sweetheart." Maya wiped her eyes, her smile radiant despite the tears. "These are happy tears. The happiest tears I've ever cried." Zoe studied them both, with the unsettling perceptiveness of children who've learned to read adult emotions for clues about their own safety. Then something seemed to click in her 8-year-old mind. Some understanding that went beyond words. Maya's going to stay forever, isn't she? It wasn't really a question. Luzik and Maya exchanged glances, the entire conversation happening in that single look. Isaac nodded slightly, giving Maya permission to answer, to claim this space in their lives officially. "Would you like that?" Maya asked, kneeling down to Zoe's level. "Would you want me to stay forever?" "Yes." Zoe's answer was immediate, emphatic, certain in the way only children can be when they know something is fundamentally right. "Then we'd be a real family. A forever family. We already are a real family," Maya said, pulling Zoe into her arms. "We've been one for a while now. Love makes families, not just blood. Not just rules or papers or ceremonies. Just love and choice, and showing up for each other." Zoe wrapped her arms around Maya's neck, squeezing tight. "I love you, Maya. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. More than I knew it was possible to love someone." Isaac watched them, his daughter and the woman he loved, holding each other in the soft lamplight of his living room, and felt something inside him finally completely heal. Not the absence of grief for Caroline, but the presence of something new alongside it. Room in his heart for both the past he'd cherished and the future he was building. Group hug. Zoe declared with the enthusiasm of a child who discovered the perfect solution to everything. Isaac joined them, the three of them tangled together in the middle of the living room. And for a moment, everything was perfect and simple and right. Later, after Zoe was back in bed, after another story and reassurances that yes, Maya would be there in the morning, and yes, they were all happy, and yes, everything was going to be okay, Maya showed Isaac something she'd found on Zoe's desk that afternoon. It was a new drawing, different from all the others. 3 figures holding hands, all drawn in bright, bold, confident colors. No faded ghost anymore, no translucent mother figure slowly disappearing. Just Daddy, me, and Maya, all solid and present and real, surrounded by hearts and flowers and sunshine. Below it, in Zoe's improving handwriting, she'd written, "My forever family, for real this time." Isaac stared at the drawing, his vision blurring with tears he didn't bother to hide. "When did she make this?" "Today after school. She said she wanted to draw how she feels now, not how things used to be." Maya's voice was soft, wondering. "She's healing, Isaac, we all are. Not by forgetting what we lost, but by learning how to carry it alongside what we're finding." 6 weeks, Isaac said, looking at the calendar on the wall where the surgery date was circled in red marker. 6 weeks, and then we can really start planning our future. Really start living instead of just hoping. "We already have," Maya corrected gently, lacing her fingers through his. "This is already our life, Isaac. The surgery just means we'll have more time to live it, more years to watch Zoe grow up, more pancake Sundays, more moments like this one." They stood together in the quiet house, holding Zoe's drawing like the precious declaration it was. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering everything in white. A fresh start, a clean slate, a world being made new while they slept. Inside, 3 hearts beat in rhythm, not perfect, not without scars, but choosing each other despite every reason to be afraid. Isaac placed the drawing on the mantel next to the 2 photos already there. Caroline's portrait and the new family picture. Past, present and future, all honored, all real, all part of the story they were writing together. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave enough to let me help. For trusting me with this. For choosing us even when it scared you." Maya leaned against him, her head fitting perfectly in the hollow of his shoulder. "Thank you for seeing me when I was trying so hard to be invisible. For making me believe I was worth saving. For teaching me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's just another form of love." They made their way upstairs together. Checking on Zoe one more time, she slept peacefully, her new drawing already framed and placed on her nightstand where she could see it first thing every morning. In their own room, their shared room now, officially, they held each other in the darkness. Two people who'd both lost too much and found each other anyway. 6 weeks, Maya whispered against his chest. 6 weeks, Isaac confirmed. And then the rest of our lives. Outside, the snow fell steadily, quietly, covering the world in possibility. Inside, 3 hearts beat as one. A family not born of perfect circumstances, but built through courage and choice and the audacity to hope for better days. This was love. This was healing. This was home. 8 months had passed since the surgery, and autumn had returned with its gentle reminder that time moved forward, that seasons changed, that life continued in its beautiful, inevitable way. Isaac stood at the kitchen counter on a Sunday morning, making pancakes shaped like butterflies, a tradition that had started with Caroline, paused for 3 grieving years, and now continued with new hands helping. New laughter filling the spaces that had been silent for so long. You're getting really good at those. Daddy, Zoe said from her spot at the table, where she was carefully arranging napkins and forks with the attention to detail she'd inherited from her mother. She was 9 now, taller, more confident, her smile coming easily these days. Practice makes perfect, Isaac replied, sliding a particularly well-formed butterfly onto a plate. Plus, I have excellent supervisors. Maya emerged from their bedroom, a fact that still made Isaac's heart swell every morning, looking radiant in the morning light streaming through the windows. The surgery had given her more than just physical health. It had given her back her life, her energy, the vibrant presence that had attracted him from the beginning but had been dimmed by illness and exhaustion. Now she glowed, and Isaac couldn't stop himself from smiling every time he looked at her. Something smells like heaven, she said, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind, pressing a kiss between his shoulder blades. The casual intimacy of the gesture still amazed him, how natural it had become, how right it felt to have someone share his space, his life. His morning routine, pancake Sunday, he said, turning to kiss her forehead. Old traditions and new beginnings. That's what I love about this family, Maya murmured. We don't erase the past. We build on it. They gathered around the table, the 3 of them, and Isaac watched as Zoe chattered about her upcoming week, about the school play she'd been cast in, about her friend Brenna's sleepover invitation, about all the ordinary, beautiful chaos of childhood that he'd been afraid she'd never experience again. Maya listened with the attention that made everyone feel seen, asking questions, offering suggestions, being exactly what Zoe needed. Not a replacement mother, but a mother nonetheless, chosen and cherished. After breakfast, they cleaned up together in their usual synchronized dance. Isaac washing, Maya drying, Zoe putting things away while narrating a story she was making up. It was so normal, so perfectly mundane, that Isaac had to pause and just breathe it in, remember what it felt like when normal had seemed impossible. Hey, Maya said softly, touching his arm. You okay? More than okay, he said honestly. Just grateful. For all of this. For you. Later that morning they drove to Rosewood Memorial Hospital, not for treatment this time, but for a follow-up appointment that had become routine. Both Isaac and Maya were healing beautifully, the doctor said. The kidney was functioning perfectly. All markers were excellent. They were, by every medical measure, success stories. But as they sat in the waiting room, Zoe between them playing a game on Maya's phone, Isaac knew the real success wasn't in the medical charts. It was in moments like this, his daughter leaning against Maya's shoulder, Maya's hand in his, the 3 of them together and whole. Mr. Dalton. Miss Cordova? The nurse called them back, and they followed her to an examination room where Dr. Alvarez greeted them with a broad smile. You 2 are my favorite patients, she said, reviewing their charts. Everything looks phenomenal. Isaac, your remaining kidney is functioning at optimal levels. Maya, the transplanted kidney has integrated beautifully. No signs of rejection, all numbers exactly where we want them, so we're good. Maya asked, and Isaac heard the hope in her voice, hope that had been so hard for her to hold on to for so long. You're more than good. You're both cleared for completely normal activities. No restrictions. Dr. Alvarez looked at them over her glasses, her expression warm. I have to say, in 20 years of doing this, I've rarely seen two people more committed to their recovery. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We're just living, Isaac said simply. Finally! The drive home was quiet but comfortable, Zoe dozing in the back seat, exhausted from the early morning. When they pulled into the driveway, Isaac noticed something that made him smile, a small "sold" sign in front of the house next door. It had been empty for months, and he'd wondered who their new neighbors would be. Inside, Maya went to put Zoe down for a nap, while Isaac checked the mail. Among the bills and catalogues was a thick envelope addressed to Maya, official-looking, with a university seal. His heart jumped. She'd applied to several graduate programs, wanting to pursue her master's in child psychology, but had been convinced she wouldn't get in anywhere. Isaac! Maya came down the stairs, and he held up the envelope. This came for you. Her eyes widened. She took it with trembling hands, stared at it for a long moment. I can't open it. You open it. It's your future. You should open it. Our future, she corrected. Everything I do now is our future. Please. Isaac carefully opened the envelope, pulled out the letter, and read the first line. He looked up at her, grinning. Congratulations. You've been accepted to the graduate program at State University. Full scholarship. Maya's hands flew to her mouth, tears immediately streaming down her face. Are you serious? You're not joking. I would never joke about this. He pulled her into his arms, and she sobbed against his chest. Happy tears, relieved tears, tears that released months of tension and doubt. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, without this family, without... She couldn't finish, just held him tighter. They stood in their living room, holding each other, and Isaac thought about how far they'd all come. From that first day, when Maya had shown up late and flustered to interview for a babysitting job, to this moment where she was pursuing her dreams, building a career, planning a future she'd been convinced she wouldn't live to see. That evening, they celebrated with Zoe, who insisted on making a congratulations banner and baking cupcakes that turned out lopsided but delicious. Bernard and his wife stopped by with champagne, sparkling cider for Zoe, and they toasted to new beginnings and hard-won victories. After everyone left and Zoe was in bed, Isaac and Maya sat on the back porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill. The stars were brilliant overhead, sharp and clear in the cold air. I have something for you, Isaac said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Maya's eyes widened. Isaac, you already gave me a ring. We're already engaged. This is different. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with 3 charms, a butterfly, a heart, and a tiny kidney. The butterfly is for Caroline, for the tradition she started that we're keeping alive. The heart is for us, for what we've built together. And the kidney, his voice caught, that's for the gift that gave us this future. All of it together, because none of it exists separately. It's all one story. Maya took the bracelet with shaking hands, tears flowing freely again. It's perfect. You're perfect. This life is... She couldn't find words big enough. Isaac fastened the bracelet around her wrist, and she held it up to the porch light, watching the charms catch and reflect. When's the wedding? She asked softly. We've been engaged for 6 months. I don't want to wait anymore. Neither do I. Isaac pulled her closer. What about spring? April, maybe. Cherry blossoms and new beginnings? April sounds perfect. She rested her head on his shoulder, the same way she had that very first night, when she'd fallen asleep in his chair and changed everything. Small ceremony? Just family and close friends? Whatever you want. As long as at the end of it, you're officially my wife and Zoe's mom. They sat in comfortable silence, the swing moving gently. Through the window, Isaac could see the living room mantel where 3 photos now sat. Caroline's portrait, the family photo from Maya's graduation, and a new one taken just last week at Zoe's school concert. All 3 of them laughing at something Zoe had said. Past, present, and future, all honored, all cherished. Do you ever feel guilty? Maya asked quietly. About being happy? About moving forward? Isaac considered the question carefully. Sometimes. But then I remember what Caroline said before she died. She told me that the worst thing I could do would be to stop living in her memory. That the best way to honor what we had was to prove that love was worth it, worth the risk, worth the pain, worth trying again. He kissed Maya's temple. You taught me that. You and Zoe together. You taught me that there's enough room in a heart for all of it, the grief and the joy, the past and the future. I used to think I'd never have this, Maya whispered. A family, a home, a future. I'd convinced myself I wasn't worth saving, that I should just accept whatever time I had and not burden anyone else. And now? Now I know that letting people love you isn't a burden. It's a gift you give them, the chance to show up, to matter, to make a difference. You gave me that gift. You let me matter. You've always mattered. From the moment you showed up late and flustered and apologizing, I just had to get out of my own way long enough to see it. They sat until the cold drove them inside, until Maya was yawning and Isaac's back was stiff from the wooden swing. Inside, they checked on Zoe one more time, a ritual neither of them could break. She was sprawled across her bed, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, her latest drawing on the nightstand. This one showed a house with 4 figures, Daddy, me, Maya, and a small figure in the clouds, labeled Mommy watching over us. Hearts connected all the figures. Even the one in heaven. She's going to be okay, Maya whispered. She's learning that love doesn't end. It just changes shape. We all are, Isaac agreed. In their bedroom, Maya carefully placed the bracelet on her nightstand where she could see it first thing every morning. Isaac watched her get ready for bed, such a simple domestic act, but one that filled him with contentment. This was what he'd been missing, what he'd been afraid to hope for. Not grand gestures or dramatic moments, but the quiet everyday miracle of sharing a life with someone. As they settled into bed, Maya curled against him, fitting perfectly in the space that had been empty for so long. "Thank you," she murmured, already drifting towards sleep. "For what? For pretending to be asleep that night? For testing me? For giving me a chance to show you who I was?" Isaac smiled in the darkness. "Thank you for passing the test. For falling asleep on my shoulder. For being brave enough to stay. I'll always stay," she promised. "For as long as you'll have me. Forever then," he said. "I'll have you forever." Outside, the autumn night deepened. Leaves fell silently from trees, making room for new growth come spring. Inside, 3 hearts beat in peaceful rhythm. A family not born of perfect circumstances, but built through courage, sacrifice, and the radical choice to love again despite knowing how much it could hurt. This was the promise kept. This was the life Caroline had wanted for him. This was healing that honored loss without being imprisoned by it. This was home in its truest sense. Not a place, but people choosing each other, day after day, moment by moment. On the mantel, the photos stood witness. In Zoe's room, drawings proclaimed hope. In the master bedroom, 2 people who'd both known profound loss held each other and dreamed of the future. And somewhere, in memory, in spirit, in the love that never truly dies, Caroline smiled. Her promise fulfilled, her family whole again in a new and beautiful way. This was life. This was love. This was everything.